Hi, I'm David Donovan, and I'm the editor-in-chief of North Carolina Lawyers Weekly and South Carolina Lawyers Weekly. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 2021 Diversity and Inclusion Awards. Like so many events, this year's Diversity and Inclusion Awards are being hosted entirely online. I'm very sad not to have the chance to congratulate all of our honorees in person this year, and I'm really looking forward to attending next year's event in person. But one of the great benefits of hosting our event online is that this way we can make these conversations that you're about to hear with our honorees available for you to view and share anytime. Diversity and inclusion matter to us here at Lawyers Weekly because they're essential for ensuring that our legal system is both fair and just. They're sources of strength because having that diversity of perspectives is vital for finding solutions to the problems that people are facing whenever they encounter our legal system. So a diverse and inclusive workforce helps law firms do a better job of serving their clients at the same time that it helps our legal system and our community at large. At Lawyers Weekly, we're committed to diversity and inclusion in our newsroom and in our storytelling, and we hope that that commitment is reflected in the news reporting that we provide. The honorees that you'll be hearing from today exemplify that mindset and are leaders within the legal profession in promoting diversity and inclusion. They have a tremendous amount of insight to offer us about why diversity and inclusion are so important, but also about how law firms can take their aspirations for a more diverse and inclusive workforce and translate that into effective steps towards reaching that goal. Increasingly, firms are realizing that cultivating diversity and inclusion is not the work of a committee or a team within a firm, but the job of the entire firm, straight up to the very top of the leadership. So it's our privilege to be recognizing these honorees, and we greatly appreciate their taking time to be part of this event. Thank you for joining us and congratulating our 2021 Diversity and Inclusion Award winners. Now I'd like to turn this event over to our General Manager, Andrea Mounts, who will be speaking with our honorees.
We are now joined by Chesley Crist with Pointer Spruill. She is the diversity advisor and also is a former Miss USA, reigning in 2019. Chesley, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We really appreciate you joining us today. What would you say motivates you most in your work as an advocate for diversity and inclusion?
I would say my own experiences as a woman and a person of color, because I know the effect it can have on a person to not have an inclusive environment and to feel like there isn't enough diversity in the communities that you're in. There have been plenty of times where something as simple or seemingly as simple as a microaggression could derail my whole day, especially if it's coming from, a person that, is a person of power, either in my firm, outside of my firm, in the legal profession. I remember when I was practicing law, there were times when I would constantly get almost carded going through different courtrooms because, if I was bringing my laptop or my cell phone, there were times when people wouldn't believe that I was an attorney. If other people aren't allowed to bring in laptops and cell phones, and so I'd have to pull out my bar card and say, yes, I am an attorney. I'm here to argue. And too often I had to do that. Too often I felt like I was faced with those challenges specifically because I was a woman and a person of color. So having those experiences has really changed my perspective and motivated me, knowing that nobody should have to go through that. We should all be on an equal and level playing field.
Fantastic, and thank you for that perspective. What would you say makes you most proud of Pointer Spruill and their stance on diversity?
I would say the new role that they've created, and funny enough, I'm the person who's sitting in this new role as diversity advisor. I'm the first diversity advisor for the firm, but it's important to me because I think Pointer has demonstrated that they want to put both money and time behind this very important priority that is diversity and inclusion. I think, frequently we see, people in the legal profession or, organizations in the legal profession sort of finding an attorney and just saying, you're going to be, the head of our D&I on top of all of your other work, which, many times that's just all that people have the resources for, and that's the best that they can do.
Absolutely.
But I'm glad that Pointer Spruill has decided we're going to carve out a specific role, and that is going to be your whole job. That's going to be it. And so it's nice to have that. It's nice that they have decided to really put their money where their mouth is and say, like, we're gonna continue to invest time and money in this, and it's going to be your job to do it.
It's definitely unique in the profession, that's for sure. Who would you say has inspired you most in your work with diversity and why?
I would say that There's actually a specific person, my mom, who has inspired me the most. She frequently speaks about diversity and inclusion. She's a chief human resources officer for a company in South Carolina. And, she talks about these topics all the time. But what's been most inspiring for me is that she talks about the tons of different kinds of diversity. I think frequently we talk about gender and racial diversity, but sometimes we forget the diversity that members of the LGBTQ plus community bring, generational diversity in the workplace, sexual orientation diversity. There are tons of different, sort of types of diversity, and better knowing and being aware of those different types can help us, so that we are aware of the challenges that trans men and women face, that we're aware of the challenges that, older or senior attorneys in the workplace face, and we know how to make accommodations for those different types.
That's a great perspective as well, especially bringing in the generational diversity, because obviously you see a lot in law firms. What goal remains unfulfilled for you as an advocate for diversity? Where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we did while I was still, practicing law full time at Pointers, we passed a diversity and inclusion plan. It's a 5-year plan, and my job as a diversity advisor is to implement that plan and make sure that we do the things that we've set out to accomplish. And so, really, just reaching those goals is sort of unfulfilled for me. I mean, it's a 5-year plan, and so we still have 3 years left on that plan. And I'm excited that we're making great progress towards our goals. But until we've actually hit those goals, there's still work to be done.
Absolutely. And that's wonderful for you to say. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today and for all that you do for diversity and inclusion. On behalf of Lawyers Weekly, we salute you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We are now joined by our first firm honoree, McGangus, Goudylock and Curry, and representing them today is Jay Curry, Managing Partner, and Amy Jenkins, Chair of their Diversity Committee. Welcome, you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What would you say motivates your firm most in your work as advocates for diversity and inclusion?
Well, first of all, I would say it's the right thing to do. Everyone in our society should be treated equally and have the same opportunities. Also, being able to call on members of our firm of different backgrounds and different life experiences just makes us a better firm, makes us a better business. And we realize that. And finally, from a business perspective, clients are demanding that firms look more like society, and firms draw on the positive influences that can come about when you have greater diversity and you have greater inclusion. And we're seeing that not only in our firm, but I think you're seeing that across the business world, that it's something that businesses and law firms simply must do to continue to be competitive in the market.
I agree with everything Jay said, and I'll add as well that I started practicing law in 1993 in North Carolina, and there was a lot less diversity in the legal world back then. I'm personally motivated by the strides that the legal community has made, both locally and on a grander scale, to recruit, promote, and retain more women, people of color, individuals with disabilities, and other diverse groups. And I look forward to, and I'm motivated by the fact that I hope in my lifetime, we have a situation where diverse people are so noticed, appreciated, and included that they don't have to ever question whether their gender or their race or their disability or their sexual orientation or other characteristic had any negative influence over their career in terms of either being hired, promoted, or included within their legal organization.
Thank you very much for that. What makes you most proud of your firm in the area of diversity?
Well, I think probably the way that our firm and our individuals responded to the events of last summer. We saw people hurting. We realized that this was something much bigger than we had ever experienced before. We were not afraid to take a stand. It created opportunities for us to listen to each other. It created opportunities for us to hear about some of our younger lawyers' backgrounds and some of our diverse lawyers' backgrounds, and really created meaningful conversations within the firm like we've never had before. And I think that is something that I'm very proud of, and I think it's here to stay. I think it changed in many ways, although we had been pretty active in the diversity and inclusion goals over the last few years. I think last summer really changed the way we looked at it and really changed the way that we wanted to approach it going forward. And I think that'll happen. We set up a series of town halls to talk about really tough issues that no one had ever talked about internally before. We reached out to individuals who we knew were in pain. And it just created an entirely different atmosphere and understanding within the firm. And I think that's what I'm clearly the most proud of.
And I'm most proud of our MGC leadership. I feel like all of the leadership, starting with Jay and all of the others, have always tried to do the right thing in whatever situation we faced. And this has really become apparent with our DEI efforts. I think our leadership's committed to fairness and to opportunity, and it welcomes diversity in all of our staff and also our attorneys. So we may not be the first firm to launch DEI initiatives, but I'm proud of the fact that what we do launch and what we do is driven from the top down and supported wholeheartedly.
Well, the legal community of South Carolina certainly appreciates what you do and congratulates you on this honor. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Now let's welcome Ariel Robertson, partner with Nelson Mullins. Ariel, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Couple of questions for you to start us out. Who most inspired you in your work with diversity and inclusion, and why?
Well, first I want to say thank you for this wonderful honor. I would really say that that question is one. I couldn't answer that question without mentioning my family, who is my biggest inspiration, and I'm thankful to God, that I have such wonderful influences in my family. But it just goes back through the line. But I'll start with my grandma Harris, who was a community activist in Hartford, Connecticut. She did a lot of work in the community just to make sure that marginalized voices were heard, and I got that example, from the time I was young, and it's carried throughout my life. But my mom and my father, they've shown me the importance of loving the skin that I'm in and being kind to others, and really just welcoming in any and every perspective that I'd meet. And that the last person I really want to know is my uncle Doug, who actually he owns a company called Kaleidoscope Group, and it actually is a diversity and inclusion consulting firm. So, throughout my life, I've just had these really great influences of people who just, they understand the importance of representation, again, lifting up marginalized voices, and really just having different perspectives come together to the table.
That's excellent. Sounds like you have some great mentors. What must the legal community do to promote meaningful and long-term diversity within the legal and justice system?
I really think the legal profession has to continue just being intentional. Intentionality is key. And for me, that word speaks volumes. And I'm grateful to be at a firm like Nelson Mullins, where, diversity, inclusion, and I'll also say equity is really important. And I'll be honest, the legal profession, I believe it was last year the ABA came out with a statistic. I believe 5% of the legal profession is made up of, Black people, 2% Black women, such as myself, and those numbers are comparable when you look at other minority groups. So again, intentionality is key. Here at our firm, we've created a program called the Diverse Pipeline Outreach Program. And I'm really excited about this program because I myself went to an HBCU, a historically Black college, for law school. And, a lot of us that were at that law school, we were first generation attorneys We had never met any attorneys in our lives in a meaningful way. And so this program really is one that I value, and I'm thankful for my firm that they got on board, and they've really kind of just bolstered and championed that program for us.
That's fantastic. What goal would you say remains unfulfilled for you as an attorney and an advocate for diversity and inclusion?
I would just say, just continuing to build a practice and be an example for others. So, that's going to always be my goal. I want to make sure that when I leave the practice of law, I would have set an example. I would have opened doors and created seats at the table for others who look like me, others who, are, Black and brown, because, like I said, the legal profession lacks diversity, but we're making strides, and we're really intentional again about creating those opportunities for individuals that are coming along the way. So that's my goal. This program that I spoke to, the diverse pipeline outreach program at our firm, we are really devoted to making sure that we reach young individuals who are in undergrad, so prior to law school, before they get to the door, and they're trying to figure out, the rat race of what is law school. We want to make sure that they understand what it means to practice law. So I'm excited.
That's fantastic. Well, you have quite an influence, and we want to congratulate you on being honored this year as one of our diversity and inclusion honorees, and we commend you from Lawyers Weekly for the work that you're doing. Thank you for joining us today. We're now joined by Jacklauson with Nelson Mullins, Riley, and Scarborough. Congratulations, Jack, on receiving this award, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. What motivates you most in your work as an attorney and an advocate for diversity and inclusion?
I think it's fairness. I think it's a fundamental belief that everyone should have a fair opportunity to become a lawyer. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. It hasn't been the case, and it's still not the case. And so one of the prime motivators for the diverse pipeline outreach program that we've started with Nelson Mullins is to work with diverse students who are in undergrad and have an interest in law, and try to get them to really understand the importance and the opportunities of being a lawyer, while also delivering them some skill sets and tools that will hopefully help them achieve that goal. And we hope that that's a step in the right direction toward everybody having a fair opportunity.
That sounds like a great program. How long has that been around with Nelson Mullins?
We are just in the starting process of it. We've been developing it for about a year and a half, and we are in the first semester of working with two historically Black colleges and universities in North Carolina and South Carolina with the hope of expanding.
Excellent. What makes you, or who has most inspired you in your work with diversity and inclusion, and why?
Most recently, as we've been working on this program, it's been my co-chair on the program, Ariel Robertson. She is a young diverse attorney at Nelson Mullins who I've been working with for the last year and a half, and I've seen her just incredible commitment to diversity and inclusion initiatives. And she's done all of this in the last year and a half while being up for her partnership promotion and all of the work that entails, which she achieved. Wow. And she had a child and is raising a newborn. And so I look at her balancing all of these factors and all of this work and still putting in the commitment to the diversity and inclusion initiatives. And I really have no excuse but to meet that commitment.
Wow, she's very inspiring, that's for sure.
Yes.
What must the legal community do to promote meaningful and long-term diversity within the legal and justice system?
So I got a question in our first session with a student at North Carolina Central in our outreach program. And she asked what seemed like a fairly basic question of why isn't there better diversity in the legal profession? And I realized as I was trying to answer the question that it's really a very complex issue. And I don't think, unfortunately, that there is a magic solution that will solve all of the problems that are causing the lack of diversity. But what I do think we can do is, I think it's going to have to start with everyone within the legal system recognizing that there are just fundamental systemic problems that are causing the lack of diversity. And it's going to take a commitment from everyone, not just the diverse attorneys or the people who might have a great passion about it, but everybody within the legal community has to recognize that there are these systemic problems and do their part to try to correct those problems.
Excellent. Great insight. I want to thank you for joining us today and congratulate you again on receiving this award.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the recognition for our program.
Now help me in welcoming Carrie Shad and Sharita Whittaker, both partners with Smith Anderson. Welcome.
Thank you. So great to be here. Thank you.
We appreciate you both joining us this afternoon. What would you say you are most proud of with regard to Smith Anderson's diversity efforts?
Sharita, you want me to go first or you want to go?
Go ahead, Carrie, you can start first.
Okay, well, I guess for me, and I've been with the firm almost 30 years. So for me, the thing that I think is most important actually about how we've approached diversity and inclusion is that it is a pillar of our firm's strategic plan. It is fundamental to what we do and how we do it. So every meaningful decision that we make internally, externally, has diversity and inclusion included in that mix. So I'm on the firm's management committee. There are 9 of us elected by the firm. Sharita and I co-chair the firm's D&I committee together. So there's that link between firm leadership and the diversity and inclusion committee. And I think that link between leadership and the effort is critical. I don't think it works without that. So for us, the full weight of our firm's leadership is not just driving, but actively participating in the firm's D&I efforts. And I think that is the thing that is most critical, but most often missed in organizations trying to do better in this space. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and to follow up with what Carrie is saying, I again completely agree that one of the things that I take pride in is that we do more than just say diversity and inclusion is important. We actually demonstrate our commitment to diversity and inclusion through actionable and measurable activities that will, influence that positive change that we hope to see in our firm and in our community. And 2 of the things I'd like to share just in the past year that I've been incredibly proud of is that our firm genuinely wants to work together to ensure that we're dismantling systemic racism. So for example, we released something that we call our internal and external statements on racial injustice. And those particular statements were, written and discussed in great detail by our diversity and inclusion committee, our managing partner, and our management committee during a very, of course, emotional and stressful, but very motivating period for all of us in response to, a number of things that happened in 2020, of course, including the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and just countless others. And in those statements, first of all, I'd say the external one was our message to our community, our friends, our family, our clients. We wanted them to know what our stance was and what we intend to do to ensure that we're helping to dismantle racial injustice. And then in our internal statement, that was a message from, again, our firm leadership in an effort to include our attorneys and our staff in the activities that we had planned for 2021 and beyond. Because again, these are things that are not going to be solved overnight, but we wanted to ensure that all of us could take an active role in ensuring that we're doing our part to dismantle systemic racism.
Excellent points from both of you. And the work you're doing is essential and much appreciated by Lawyers Weekly. What must the legal community do to promote meaningful and long-term diversity within the legal and justice system? Carrie, I'll throw that to you first.
Sure, and this has been sort of a pet issue of mine for years and years, and I have a very specific thought on this. It has long been my absolute belief that corporate legal departments and the in-house lawyers who make up those legal departments are uniquely positioned to drive diversity in the legal profession, particularly obviously in private law firms. And I think there are two ways that they do it and can do more of it. First, identify talented, diverse outside counsel. There are plenty of such folks out there. You don't have to look that hard, but you have to look. Engage these folks to do significant legal work for you, not dogs and cats, but significant legal work. It can be career building for the lawyer. It will position that lawyer to be an economically powerful member of his or her firm. And I personally benefited from that sort of advocacy and just an opportunity to do something for a client that, anybody who was anywhere had heard of before. And so that association was a platform for me. So I know how it works. So that's one. Number two, just require that your external firms be in a position, if they want to do your work, to offer up diverse talent. Doesn't have to be everybody, doesn't have to be most people, but you got to be able to staff some of the meaningful work with diverse talent. And if your law firms can't do it, I would say look somewhere else. Anyway, like I said, it's been an issue for me for a very long time, and I could go on about it. We have lots of great colleagues in legal departments across North Carolina and outside of North Carolina who do this all the time. And it does matter. It matters within our law firm. It matters.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Carrie is saying, I think about that question a little bit more broadly. And so my answer may be a little bit more broad and flowery, but I think just don't say it, do it. So if you're going to commit to saying that you're going to do something, actually do something about it. Be willing to speak up and do things that effectuate that change that it really is that you want to see in your firm, in your community, with your clients. Work to change unfair policies that are, affecting diverse people, that's attorneys or otherwise. Make sure that you're supporting, mentoring, and promoting diverse attorneys. Again, and a lot of what Carrie said is applicable here. Make sure that you're identifying that diverse talent and giving them that work. That's the only way that we'll, of course, be able to grow and expand as needed throughout our careers. And the last thing I'd like to say is just use your platform and your resources. If you have them, make sure that you're dismantling those barriers to true diversity, equity, and inclusion in your community. And for me, I definitely like to say, of course, in the criminal justice system, if there are things that you can do, you have time and or resources financially as well, make sure that you're doing what you can to dismantle those barriers.
Well, we certainly appreciate Smith Anderson using their platform for this, for diversity and inclusion, and we congratulate you on receiving this award. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Our next honoree is Rakesh Gopalan from McGuire Woods. Rakesh, welcome and congratulations on being one of our diversity and inclusion honorees for 2021. Thank you for joining us today. Rakesh, what motivates you most in your work as an attorney and as an advocate for diversity and inclusion?
I think two things. The first may be obvious, which is to uplift and help folks who are in underrepresented groups in the legal community. The second is that I think diversity initiatives help everybody, and so if done right, it's going to lift up the entire community, whether you are diverse or non-diverse or in the majority. It really is a holistic way of thinking that helps everybody achieve higher goals.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed. What must the legal community do to continue to promote meaningful and long-term diversity within the legal and justice systems?
I think that a couple things, shifting away from simply a mindset of numbers and thinking about it more in terms of a holistic approach to including folks at different levels and not just saying how many diverse candidates or diverse attorneys you have in a certain area, but where they are, what leadership roles they're taking on. Mm-hmm. And also just by talking about it, keep on talking about it. It may seem repetitive, it may seem frustrating, but I think real change only happens when these topics are just ingrained in everyone's psyche and in everyone's mind and in their mindset from a business standpoint and from just a normal social standpoint as well.
All right, very good. What makes you most proud of McGuire Woods and their diversity efforts?
We focus on the positive elements of diversity and inclusion. We're always available for any issues that our attorneys might have in the diversity space or by being diverse. But really, most of what we do is focus on how do we get opportunities, how do we take advantage of opportunities that our clients are putting in front of us to increase diversity and inclusion efforts. And the focus of our conversations really is putting people in the right space and helping them grow and achieve their goals.
Excellent. Well, the legal community in North Carolina certainly appreciates the work that you do, and congratulations on receiving this award.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. It's an honor.
We're now joined by Ryan Robertson, Interim Co-Executive Director for Southern Coalition for Justice and one of our 2021 Diversity and Inclusion honorees. Thank you for joining us, Ryan.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Tell us about Southern Coalition for Justice and the services you provide.
Sure. The Southern Coalition for Social Justice partners with communities of color and economically disadvantaged communities in the South. We are a regional organization to advance their political, social, economic rights, basically to make move them into and make folks a part of the game, so that they can participate on equal footing with other citizens.
Excellent. Excellent. What you feel motivates you in your work as an advocate for diversity and inclusion?
I would say the group from its founding and me personally, the possibility of a society where the very necessity of wonderful awards such as this are no more. In other words, a society where race, gender, sexuality, they're just not relevant considerations.
Terrific. Who would you say has inspired your work in diversity and inclusion the most, and why have they inspired you?
I would say, well, personally, I would say my grandfather. I was raised in North Carolina, actually, by my grandparents, and my grandfather was the smartest, arguably least educated man I've ever known, and the memory of him it just makes me wonder, what his contribution to society overall could have been had he had the same kind of opportunities afforded to him that other people do, right? Like I'm always kind of wondering and just curious, like what he, would have been able to deliver had he had those opportunities. Professionally, I would say, and locally, I would say North Carolina Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls. She is our founder, and I, for the vast majority of my career, I've been in business, in finance. And about 5 years ago, I was introduced to Justice Earls, and under the thought that maybe I would join the board. I did it as a favor to a friend, the meeting, thinking all along, there's no way, like I just don't have time. And I walked out of that meeting and, just said to my friend, you know what, I'm not ever speaking to you again, because Justice Earls she is literally so inspirational. She's very, very hard to say no to. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I joined the organization and delved into its work, because it is extraordinarily rewarding.
Both sound like great inspiration for you. What would you say makes you most proud of Southern Coalition for Justice and the work that you've done?
Sure. So a couple of things. First of all, the work, right? This past election, North Carolinians, and other Southerners were able to express their citizenry via the ballot in record numbers. Also, the possibility of police-free schools, right? The possibility that children can go to school and not be in a place where they feel under threat. And finally, returning citizens who are given a pathway and assistance to come back into society and be contributing members. I would also say our makeup as a group, right? The folks who are doing the work. We run the spectrum, gender, race, sexuality. So we have a broad assortment of opinions that are brought to the table. And in my opinion, that's how you get to the best results. You have lots of different perspectives and ways of thinking, all kind of thrown into the mix together, and it allows the best solutions to rise to the top.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight. From Lawyers Weekly, we want to congratulate you on being chosen as an honoree for our Diversity Inclusion 2021. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. We absolutely appreciate it.
Now let's welcome Jack Santaniello, a partner with Shoemaker, Loop & Kendrick, and one of our honorees for 2021's Diversity and Inclusion. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you.
What must the legal community do at this point to promote meaningful and long-term diversity within the legal and justice system?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think a lot of it is first starts with awareness and kind of a self-assessment as to where things are in the legal community, in the community in general, and then to not say that it's not our problem as a profession or as a community, but to then act upon those things that we are made aware of. I think that there is, I think awareness has increased over the past several years or so, but I think we have a long way to go in not just our profession, but in various professions and just walks of life to say, wow, this is really going on. It isn't something that's happening somewhere else. It's happening in our community, the good and the bad.
Yes, I agree. What goal do you feel remains unfulfilled for you or Shoemaker as an advocate for diversity and inclusion?
So for me personally, I think it is, if I'm being totally honest with you, it's an unattainable goal in this utopia of diversity and inclusion that we don't talk about it anymore because it's just become part of our community DNA. So unrealistic expectations, at least in my lifetime. So what the kind of miniature or the baby step goals that I feel for me personally is those little successes, those little opportunities to make people aware, those little opportunities to further move that ball into this utopia society where we don't have to talk about these things anymore. So I think that for me is do what I can while I'm here to move those things forward for my kids, for my grandkids, and others.
Excellent points. Who do you feel has inspired you the most in your work with diversity and inclusion, and why?
So it's a generational thing. So certainly my parents. I joke around and say that my last name is a nice Irish name, which obviously it isn't. It's Italian. So the Italian side, and then my mom is from South America, from Colombia, so the Latino side. And so, blending those two things together and just having that as part of my life growing up and continuing to be part of my life. And then I look to my own kids. I have two high schoolers that are embracing culture through not only our own household, but through the community, through them learning Spanish. And their grammar is probably better than mine is at this point, through going through all the mechanics of grammar and everything else. But I think that, I get inspiration and just from the community in general and the people that I deal with, to be able to see them thrive and recognize and acknowledge and move forward. So it's multifaceted for me.
Thank you very much for joining us today. All excellent points. And once again, congratulations to you for receiving this Diversity and Inclusion Award.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
Let's welcome Justin Outling with Brooks Pierce. He is a partner and director of the diversity program. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to appear. And congratulations on Brooks Pierce receiving this award. What makes you most proud of your law firm with regard to diversity and inclusion?
Sure. Really, our law firm's actions to further diversity and inclusion is what makes me most proud. I think everyone knows the old saying, talk is cheap, but certainly in an industry in which every single minute is a billable unit, where people invest a lot of time and financial resources, it says a lot. And our firm, Brooks Pierce, has done that over the course of the past several years. And so I'm really proud of the actions it's taken in that regard.
Very good. What goal do you feel remains unfulfilled for Brooks Pierce or yourself as an attorney and an advocate for diversity and inclusion?
Diversity and inclusion is a core value of Brooks Pierce. And so we've been working a very long time at creating an environment in which everyone can be successful and provide wonderful services to our clients and feel welcome and comfortable at our law firm. One of our goals is that it also be more diverse and greater reflect our surrounding communities. And so that's something we're constantly working towards. And that's something we haven't achieved the goal yet, but we're working hard to that end.
Great. Thank you for that. Who has most personally inspired you in your work with diversity and inclusion, and why?
The person who's most inspired me in my work in connection with promoting diversity and inclusion at Brooks Pierce is former Chief Justice Henry Fry. Former Chief Justice Fry was once practiced at the firm. He's a great friend and colleague. In thinking about all of the things he's done for the legal profession generally, and more specifically with regard to diversity and shattering glass ceilings, he's an inspiration to me, and I would venture to guess everyone at Brooks Pierce.
I would venture to guess everyone at Lawyers Weekly as well. We had the pleasure of honoring Judge Fry in our Hall of Fame. I believe it was a year and a half ago. So we know what an inspirational and wonderful man he is. Thank you so much, Justin, for your time today, and congratulations to Brooks Pierce and yourself for this award.
Great. Thank you much.
Now join me in welcoming James Farren, founding partner of the law offices of James Scott Farren and one of our diversity inclusion honorees. Welcome, Mr. Farren.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Glad to be here.
Who has most inspired you in your work for diversity and inclusion, and why?
You know, a personal hero of mine is Nelson Mandela. I went to South Africa on vacation and visited Robben Island, and his story of being excluded by society and hanging in there, not being bitter, and then finding a way to work and reform that society, which benefited their nation. That's, to me, he's been an inspiring example of a human being, and sort of inspires me to work at our end at promoting the values of diversity and inclusion.
Fantastic. He's one of my personal heroes as well, so we share that. What would you say the legal community must do now to promote meaningful and long-term diversity within the legal and justice system?
Yeah, to me, it's two things. One is just to be aware of all of our intrinsic biases. I think that's the first thing. And then secondly, I'm a big believer in working on addressing systemic racism and discrimination. And if we really attack that, it creates the conditions for people for a diverse group of people to rise.
Excellent. Great point. What would you say there's a goal of yours that remains unfulfilled as an attorney and advocate for diversity and inclusion?
A big cause for me is justice for Black farmers. We had one of our signal cases was having a lead role in the Black farmer discrimination litigation earlier this decade, and we were able to achieve a measure of justice for a number of Black farmers, but there are a ton who remain mistreated at the hands of the U.S. government. That farming is not as diverse as it should be because of the difficult conditions they face, the difficult access to government loans. So for me, continuing the fight and seeing Black farmers achieve justice is an unfinished cause. There's currently before Congress a Justice for Black Farmers Act, which would go a long way towards remedying some of those conditions. So that's a heartfelt cause.
What else makes you most proud of your law firm?
Well, besides that case and the work we were able to do, we've represented successfully over 50,000 people. So the difference and that's a diverse group of people throughout the state of North Carolina. And so the difference that we've been able to make in their lives, some smaller and some larger than others, but in all instances, we've helped people in their situations, and that's made me really proud.
Excellent. Well, we thank you for the work that you're doing from all of us at Lawyers Weekly, and we congratulate you on being one of our diversity and inclusion honorees.
Thank you very much. I'm honored.
Now join me in welcoming Disability Rights North Carolina. With me today, I have Emma Kenya-Dewey, who is the legal director of Disability Rights North Carolina, and board member Evan Lewis. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're very happy to have you here this afternoon. Let's start out with just some information on Disability Rights North Carolina. What services do you provide?
Sure. We are a nonprofit legal advocacy agency that we fight for the rights of people in North Carolina with disabilities. We handle all manner of cases involving discrimination, abuse, and other rights violations statewide, and we do not charge people with disabilities for our services. Just to give an example of types of cases, we do pretty much what other, I would say, larger law firms do in North Carolina. We handle employment and discrimination cases. We also handle Medicaid and health rights cases, education, prisons. We have a criminal justice team as well. Another leg of our organization is called investigations and monitoring. And that's where we go into facilities and make sure that they're in compliance with laws and that the residents are not being abused or neglected. I'm sure there are other services that we're providing that I'm leaving out, but it's pretty expansive. Just about any case that you can think of where it's affecting an individual with a disability and the discrimination is based on their disability, we would consider that case for representation.
Very good. Evan, would you like to add anything to Emma's comments?
No, I think Emma did a wonderful job of comprehensively discussing what the agency does. There also is an aspect of the program called information and referral, where folks call in and we give them some basic information about the issue that they have, and if appropriate, refer them to another agency that might more appropriately help them.
Excellent. I'm going to ask this question. Go ahead.
Just a little bit. So part of, I know part of what we're talking about today is diversity and inclusion, and we've done a bit of restructuring in our organization, including the information and referral team. So that team is now called Client Assistance and Services Engagement. And so that was a concerted effort on our part to not just do outreach and tell you how we can benefit you in the community, but engage the community and listen and learn from the community itself. What do you need, and how do we work on that together? And so that's one of the things that we did with the information and referral team.
Excellent. Sounds like you're doing wonderful work, very, very beneficial to the community. This is an individual question for each of you, and Emma, again, I'll ask you to go first. Who has most inspired you in your work for diversity and inclusion, and why?
Let's see. I can't say that there is one individual that has inspired me. It's really driven by just a desire for equity, right? That's been from kindergarten on. Like, that's not fair, you know? And so what has motivated me is just kind of seeking that, like trying to balance and pursue equity. And so obviously I've been inspired by those around me, organizations like Disability Rights and colleagues. And, you know, prior to this, I worked with Legal Aid, and that's really been the inspiration, like that we're all in this together trying to achieve equity because we'll all benefit from it.
Great. Evan, same question to you. Who's been your big inspiration in your work with diversity and inclusion?
I have to admit, it's been, I'm a former legal aid attorney, much as Emma is. And I have to admit, it's my former bosses as legal aid attorneys, because all of them were, you know, quite insistent on making sure that the entire organization, that the organizations that I worked for, had a focus on equity and inclusion. And you know, as many people do, I learned from the folks that I worked with and under what the important things are.
Excellent. Well, on behalf of Lawyers Weekly, I want to congratulate Disability Rights North Carolina on receiving our Diversity Inclusion Award for 2021, and thank you for the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. We are absolutely humbled by the recognition, and this is only the beginning. We have a lot of work still to do, but we hope that this kind of inspires others and to engage and pursue the same.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and I have to say that the executive director, Virginia, of Disability Rights North Carolina has absolutely bought into the importance of these concepts and has implemented a bunch of programs, both internally in the agency and in our external approaches, sort of like the intake and referral issues that Emma mentioned earlier. That are designed to increase the diversity and inclusion focus of the agency.
Well, very good. Well, again, thank you for the wonderful work that you were doing, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're now with Kevin Hall with Womble Bond Dickinson. Thank you very much, Kevin, for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure, Adrian.
Kevin, tell me what motivates you most in your work as an attorney and as an advocate for diversity and inclusion.
To me, Adria, it's a chance to give back. You know, to be able to take your skill set as a lawyer, I'm a litigator by training, and dedicate that to causes in which you believe is incredibly rewarding. I have a particular interest in LGBTQ equality issues. So to take that litigation skill set to those issues and be able to make a contribution is hugely rewarding and energizing, not just for the work that you're doing on a pro bono basis, but it energizes the rest of my, more traditional commercial practice as well. So I very much enjoy it.
And it's very important work indeed. Who would you say has inspired you most in your work for diversity and inclusion, and why?
When I think about that, I think of historical examples of leadership. Ever since I was a little kid, I was fascinated by and motivated and inspired by Martin Luther King's example. And as I got older, I would read more about biographies and speeches, and a letter from the Birmingham jail, for instance, one of his famous writings I've read many, many times. So in a big picture that way, and then here just locally, there are men and women here who have pitched in across a whole range of issues. Again, for me particularly, a good friend of mine here named Neki Shutt is an LGBTQ leader here and been a friend for many years. And she's got a great spirit about her. And I've always admired Neki and the way she operates. And I'm inspired by Neki. She'd probably be embarrassed to hear that, but I am.
We're very familiar with Neki. She actually was one of our Leadership in Law recipients, I believe, back in 2016, and she does great work for the community.
She does. Delight.
Absolutely. What goal remains unfulfilled for you as an attorney and an advocate for diversity and inclusion?
Well, we're always working for positive change. I'll give you a couple of examples. Just this year here in South Carolina, we've had an anti-transgender athlete bill that would ban transgender girls from playing sports at the middle school and high school level in the General Assembly. So that threat, that risk, that bill is still pending. It is still being considered in the General Assembly. We have passed through the House here this year hate crimes legislation. It is headed to the Senate. But there was a period of time in the House's deliberations on that hate crimes bill that sexual orientation and gender identity were removed from the list of those who would be protected by hate crimes legislation. So we continue to work on that. And we had a bill here proposed in South Carolina this year in the General Assembly that would prohibit parents, their children, and their family doctor from pursuing gender confirmation or gender affirmation treatments or procedures, which would be a pretty remarkable intrusion into the doctor-patient realm and into the parent-child realm.
Mm-hmm.
These bills, have been proposed in other places around the country, and folks watching or listening have probably seen some, national headlines on these. But we have the same activity within our General Assembly here. So addressing those in a constructive way, in an effective way, are goals that continue. Every year brings new surprises, right?
Yes, it certainly does. Well, Kevin, I want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing to advance diversity and inclusion for the LGBTQ community and beyond. And I thank you very much for joining us today and congratulate you on receiving this award.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Andrea, very much.
Let's give a virtual round of applause for all of our great honorees in 2021, diversity and inclusion. Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're not already a subscriber, subscribe to North Carolina or South Carolina Lawyers Weekly. We will be hosting this event again in 2022, so please pay it forward and nominate a worthy candidate. Thank you so much for joining us again, and have a great day.